The last gas station's neon glow faded into a dying ember in the rearview mirror, swallowed by the inky desert night. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The rhythmic hum of the engine and the mournful howl of the wind whipping across the desolate Nevada landscape were the only sounds. Unease prickled at her spine, growing ever since the GPS rerouted her off the main highway onto this desolate stretch. The Howling Stretch, as the faded gas station attendant had called it with a grimace. Fatigue gnawed at Sarah, a consequence of a long day on the road. But sleep seemed a luxury she couldn't afford on this lonely stretch. Every rustle of wind against the car, every flicker of movement in the scrubland beyond the headlights, sent her heart pounding. Then, a loud bang echoed from the front of the car. Sarah slammed on the brakes, the vehicle skidding to a halt on the dusty road. Flat tire. Perfect. Grabbing her flashlight and spare tire from the trunk, a sigh escaped her lips. The wind howled, carrying with it the chilling sound of something. Laughing? A guttural, inhuman sound that sent shivers down her spine. Glancing around, she saw nothing but the endless expanse of desert under the cold, indifferent gaze of a million stars. As she wrestled with the lug nuts, the wind picked up, moaning around her like a banshee. Then, a movement in the distance caught her eye. A pair of glowing red orbs, flickering like malevolent embers in the darkness. Panic surged through her. Coyotes? Wolves? Something worse? The red eyes moved closer, and with a yelp, Sarah dropped the wrench. Two figures emerged from the darkness, tall and gaunt, their faces obscured by wide-brimmed hats. They stopped a few feet away, their silence heavy and oppressive. "Car trouble, ma'am," rasped a voice sandpaper rough. Sarah couldn't see their faces, but she felt a predatory gleam in their eyes reflected in the red glow of their flashlights. Fear choked her voice. "Yeah," she managed, forcing a smile. "Just a flat tire." The other figure chuckled, a sound like dry bones scraping together. "Looks like you could use some help." He gestured towards a dilapidated building barely visible in the distance. "We got a place just up the road. You can wait there while we fix your tire." Sarah's gut screamed at her to run, but stranded in the middle of nowhere, with night closing in and those eyes watching her, she saw no other option. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her toolbox. "All right," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The place turned out to be a ramshackle shack, its windows boarded up, the paint peeling like sunburnt skin. The men ushered her inside, the air thick with the smell of dust and something metallic. An unsettling silence hung in the air, broken only by the howling wind outside. Sarah sank into a rickety chair, her unease growing with every passing moment. The men busied themselves in a shadowy corner, their movements jerky and unnatural. She caught a glimpse of a workbench, tools scattered haphazardly, and a gleaming cleaver resting ominously on the surface. Suddenly, a guttural growl echoed from outside. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. The men exchanged a look, then one of them spoke. "Looks like our dinner arrived early." Before Sarah could react, he lunged at her, his eyes burning with a feral hunger. A scream tore from her throat as she scrambled back, knocking over a chair in her haste. But there was nowhere to run. The fight was short and brutal. Adrenaline surged through her, giving her a burst of strength she didn't know she possessed. Grabbing a metal pipe from the workbench, she swung it wildly, catching one of the men across the face. He roared in pain, stumbling back. The other man lunged, but Sarah dodged him, the pipe connecting with a sickening crack on his shoulder. He screamed, a sound that curdled her blood. Taking advantage of their momentary disorientation, Sarah bolted past them, towards the rickety door. It creaked open, revealing the vast emptiness of the desert under the cold light of the moon. Without a second thought, Sarah surged forward, the wind whipping at her hair, the chilling laughter of the desert echoing behind her. She ran blindly, fueled by pure terror, until her lungs burned and her legs threatened to give way. Dawn found Sarah collapsed by the side of the road, miles away from the shack. A passing trucker spotted her and called for help. When the police arrived, she was incoherent, babbling about glowing eyes and a desert nightmare. They found nothing at the shack, No sign of the men or the terrifying encounter. Sarah spent the next few days in a hospital bed, a hazy blur of flashing lights and concerned faces. The police, skeptical of her story, found no evidence of the men or the shack. Exhaustion and trauma clouded her memory, leaving fragmented images of glowing eyes and a desperate fight for survival. As days turned into weeks, the desert nightmare began to recede, replaced by the harsh realities of a world that wouldn't believe her. The police investigation stalled, labeled a case of road fatigue and hallucinations. Sarah felt a chilling loneliness. The world had moved on, but she was forever marked by the horror on the Howling Stretch. One evening, while sorting through her belongings, a glint of metal caught her eye. It was the wrench she had used to fight off the attackers. A wave of nausea washed over her, the memories flooding back. But this time, something else emerged, a detail she hadn't remembered before. Etched faintly on the handle of the wrench, almost invisible but undeniably there, was a symbol. A crescent moon, flanked by two howling wolves. It was a symbol she vaguely recognized, something she'd seen in a dusty travel guide about desert folklore, a mark associated with a local legend, a pack of monstrous creatures said to roam the desolate stretches, preying on the unfortunate souls who strayed off the beaten path. A cold sweat slicked her skin. The laughter she heard, the inhuman eyes. It wasn't her imagination. They were real. And somewhere out there, under the vast desert sky, they were waiting. Sarah knew she couldn't ignore this. Though the police wouldn't believe her, she had to find someone who did. She researched the symbol, delving into obscure corners of the internet, contacting anyone who might have knowledge of the legend. It was a long shot, but it was all she had. Weeks turned into months, the search riddled with dead ends and ridicule. Just as despair threatened to consume her, a reply came. A cryptic email from an old folklore enthusiast. He confirmed the legend of the creatures, but offered no explanation for their existence or how to stop them. He did, however, mention a hidden community, deep in the desert, rumored to possess knowledge of the creatures and ways to ward them off. Hope flickered within Sarah. This was a long shot, a journey into the unknown, but it was her only chance to find answers, perhaps even closure. She packed a bag, the wrench a constant reminder, and set out on a new road trip, this time guided not by GPS but by a map scrawled on a worn piece of paper, leading her deeper and deeper into the heart of the desert, towards the unknown.